The mention of Zimbabwe. What impresses many friends the most is that 100 trillion, the world's largest denomination. But you need to know, this is just the limit of how many zeros you can put on this bill, not the limit of Zimbabwe. Inflation in any country in the world, not worth mentioning in front of Zimbabwe. Just say this 100 trillion bill. Don't look at his large denomination. He can't even buy a pack of peanuts. At the height of Zimbabwe, inflation has reached 230 million%. What's the concept? When you go to a restaurant to eat, remember to check out before eating. Otherwise, after you eat, there may be an extra string of zeros on the bill. Zimbabwe is located in southern Africa. Area 390,000 square kilometers. Equivalent to the area of our country Yunnan province. When New Babwa gained independence, it is also a beautiful and rich country. 80% of the country's land can be used for farming. And there is also a very rich gold mine, platinum, diamonds, and other mineral resources. Zimbabwe is still an African adult, one of the countries with the highest literacy rates. World Bank data for 2014 shows that the literacy rate in Zimbabwe is 89%. It's one of the most educated countries in Africa. More than 90% of the population went to primary school. 44% have a high school degree. Then such an African pearl. How did it become the world's largest? What about the poorest countries? Let's talk about it today. This can put Candy Bank has gone bankrupt. Zimbabwe. Like many other countries on the African continent, late 19th century, Zimbabwe. It was also a colony of Western powers. In 1888, the British colonist Cecil Rhodes fooled the native kings of southeastern South Africa, successfully obtained local mining rights, and under the authority of the British government, create a class. The political reality of the East India Company, the British South Africa Company. The company not only has the right to form an army, you can open a bank, allocate land. Rhodes named the area Rhodesia. It extends to Zimbabwe today. Wide area including Zambia. After the British established colonial rule, quickly began redistributing land. White people control a lot of fertile land. Blacks can only work for white farmers. Become a serf, discovering deceived indigenous Africans. It took a series of armed protests. However, in the face of powerful colonists, native armies are simply vulnerable. Even the king died on the run. Britain was later bounded by the Zambezi River, split Rhodesia in two. Northern Rhodesia is what's now Zambia. Southern Rhodesia is where we're going today, Zimbabwe. But after World War II, there was a wave of independence and democracy all over the world. Most of the colonists were overthrown. 1965. Southern Rhodesia has a native white prime minister. Under the leadership of Ian Smith, unilateral declaration of independence from British rule. No longer obey the Queen of England. Same period, Robert Mugabe was formed in Zimbabwe. African National Union ZANU. Black politician Joshua Nkomo. They formed Zimbabwe. African People's Union ZAPU. The common goals of the two organizations is to overthrow white government led by Ian Smith, but it was violently suppressed by the white government. So a 15-year civil war broke out between the three parties. This is the Rhodesian Jungle War. In 1976, ZAPU and ZANU held peace talks. The two sides merged to form a cash-based ruling party, Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Front. After the merger, the two factions continued to rebel against the white government. The conflict further escalated. In December 1979, the British government transferred the two sides. In Lancaster, England, signed the famous Lancaster Accord. The agreement stipulates that Zimbabwe is temporarily under British control. New elections were held in the UK in March 1980. held under UK supervision. In the end, Mugabe won the first democratic election, achieved an absolute victory, elected the first black president. Southern Rhodesia is officially renamed as Jin, Republic of Zimbabwe. I, Robert Gabriel Mugabe. To swear. And bear true allegiance to Zimbabwe, and observe, so sympathy, so happy God. Bui's regime, from white hands to black hands. The year 1980 is also generally regarded internationally as Tianjin, the events of Zimbabwe's true independence, and Mugabe cleaned up. Sole power. In 1987, Zimbabwe switched to presidential rule. The next 30 years, Mugabe has been the president of Zimbabwe. At the beginning of the founding of the People's Republic of China, Zimbabwe is not actually poor. Although the British colonists plundered the local wealth, exploitation of blacks, but also modern industrial and agricultural technology, he stayed in Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe is like spring all year round. The climate is very pleasant. Due to its unique geographical conditions and early, advanced technology of former British colonists, boosted Zimbabwe's developed agriculture. This was once known as the African breadbasket. For many African countries that cannot afford to eat, can't be envious. The fertile land is also ideal for tobacco cultivation. Peak period. Zimbabwe's tobacco exports account for the third largest share in the world. Cigarette brands in many countries are available. Tobacco from Zimbabwe. Some people even joked about how expensive your cigarettes are. It depends on how much Zimbabwean tobacco you put in there, and the tobacco business is hugely profitable. In the 1970s and 1980s, Zimbabwe's economy is second only to South Africa in Africa. Before 2000, Zimbabwe has far more than Beijing. Tall buildings in Shanghai, and these towering buildings are all located in the 8th century. It was built in the 90s. In addition to that, Zimbabwe has a very strong tourism industry. The territory includes Otsubavu, for the ruins, and Victoria Falls, World Heritage, beautiful scenery, many tourist attractions. Capital Harare. It's on the northeastern plateau of Zimbabwe, 1,480 meters above sea level. Annual precipitation is about 1,000 millimeters. The average annual temperature is 18 degrees. Flowers bloom all year round. Once selected as one of the most livable cities in the world, and people's stereotypes. Hot African incense. The British ruled Zimbabwe. For nearly 100 years, 200,000 Englishmen left cold England. Move here. The original plan of the British colonists is to make Zimbabwe the financial center of Africa. So they are against Jin. The financial sector in Zimbabwe is highly regarded. This is from Zimbabwe. Independence. The currency exchange ratio can be seen. And mud. In 1980, gold was even more valuable than the dollar. At that time, $1 could only be exchanged for 0.68 gold yuan. Such an agriculture is not a worrying. Gradually move into industrialization. Countries that are beginning to break free from colonial shackles again. Maybe there should be a bright future. But what caused Zimbabwe? Experience the World Bank. What about miraculous economic phenomena? After Zimbabwe gained independence, the Mu family was appointed as the prime minister and then as the president. The government announced that socialism is the direction of development and closely related to national conditions, promoting socialist principles. To put it bluntly, will not immediately remove the old capitalist economic structure. Instead, it is to transform on the original basis. strive to achieve maximum economic growth and development. Such a more realistic and prudent policy. Better reconciliation before independence. The racial conflict. Therefore, the economy developed rapidly in the early stage of the Mozambican government. Society is also relatively stable, but it didn't last. With the end of the Cold War, Europe, America, and other countries no longer need to move from Africa. Set up an agent and Soviet counterbalance. Funding for Zimbabwe has also been phased out. What's more, many have followed. The Soviet Union's African countries have begun to enter the process of westernization. However, Mugabe is concerned about the Western. This set of political ideas express unacceptable. May 2001. The United States publicly criticized the doubling down on dictatorship and pursue anti-democratic policies. Mugabe immediately responded, attacking the United States for interfering in Zimbabwe's internal affairs. That's it for Zimbabwe. The Western countries led by the United States began to be arrogant. Western countries and international organizations. Sanctions have been imposed on Zimbabwe, and often accompanied by actions urging him to step down. At the same time, Mugabe has been busy with partisanship since he came to power. Constantly eliminate strange traces, suppression of freedom of opinion, although he was re-elected president 6 times. But the national heroes of yesteryear, it has long since become a single intention, lone dictator. That's it. Let's take a look at internal worries. As Western funding decreases, Zimbabwe's economy began to decline. So Mugabe, the government began to figure out how to restore the economy, saving the predominantly black poor. At this time, the issue of land was targeted. Zimbabwe after independence is a political black dominance, but economically controlled by whites. 75% of fertile farmland is controlled in the hands of very few white people. More than 6 million blacks were squeezed into impoverished lands. The Mugabe government feels that unreasonable distribution of land is the main cause of national decline. Therefore, in June 2000, Zimbabwe begins correction program. The government forcibly confiscated white land to black farmers in their own countries. This alteration policy designing Zimbabwe for 3,041 white farms, about 7 million hectares of land. Mandatory alteration policy. It led to an unprecedented conflict between